Okay, good afternoon, everybody. Good afternoon, and welcome to the National Press Club. I'm Bill McCarran. I'm the director of the Press Freedom Center at the National Press Club, a new entity that's focusing on press freedom issues. And today, this is the first of 8 events that will be taking place at the club over the next several days having to do with press freedom. And we're grateful that you're all here. We're grateful that we're going to have this program and this conversation. So while there are many issues in press freedom, we at the club are very focused on the case of Austin Tice. So there's one American journalist being held overseas now, and that's Austin. There aren't 100, there aren't a dozen, there are not a handful, there is one. And so we are unapologetic that Austin is our #1 priority. He is the person that we most want to come home. That doesn't mean other cases are not important. They are. But Austin is our first priority. And we think that US-based press freedom organizations have an obligation to look after our own. We have an obligation to look after atrocities around the world and problems around the world. But we must focus as an organization and as a community on this case. This should be our priority. Bring Austin home. I want to thank people who have helped support this event. This luncheon has a specific sponsor. It's the Washington Post Company. We have other sponsors, and I'm grateful for them, and we'll be thanking them throughout the day as well. But I wanted to touch briefly on the Washington Post Company. I was lucky enough to hear on the World Press Freedom Day run-up and on the White House Correspondents' run-up, a talk by the new publisher of the Post, Will Lewis. And Will spoke from his heart about Austin and the need for Austin to come home. And when Will speaks in public, he always speaks about Austin. We have come a long way on this. We've learned a lot, all of us together. And we're very focused now. And the Post is very focused on this, from the Press Freedom Partnership that they've created, which is really wonderful and strong, and from the new Director for Press Freedom Initiatives, my friend and colleague Jason Rezaian. They are doing remarkable things for Austin and for press freedom in general. And we're lucky today to have with us Matt Murray, the executive editor of the Post. He's going to come up in a minute. And Matt has been 100% on Team Austin. He's been good enough to come over and give his time on many events like this. And he also has this issue in his heart as well as his head. And we're so grateful for him and for his leadership with the Post. So I'm going to say one little thing about Debra Tice. She's the most courageous person I know. And that is not just because she's willing to ride in a car that I am driving around DC, which some of you do know that is really an act of courage. Debra she's got a strength we can't imagine. Any of you who for a moment have lost your kid for a couple of seconds at Disney World or at the beach, you know, you all know right here what happens. We can't imagine 12 years of this. We can't. So how she can be here with us today, I think we all should be grateful that she's here to share her heart and her thoughts with us. So please join me now in welcoming Matt Murray and Debra Tice to the National Press Club.
Ready? Yeah, I'm ready. everybody. Oh, sorry. Thank you all. It's great to be with everybody today. I think we all are here for the same reason. We know why we're here. Sorry, I better do this, right? We know why we're here. And Debra, as we've talked a number of times, I know we are both believers in press freedom and believe in hope Austin's alive and that we're going to be able to bring him home. It's really important, I think, at this time with World Press Freedom Day that we have this opportunity to call attention to his case again. As Bill said, the only American journalist currently being held overseas, and to level set a bit with everybody. I'm going to really try to do better with this. So, can you start by giving us the latest that you know about the case, about Austin, and the efforts to find him?
Well, the effort to find him is now a real challenge because for 12 and a half years, our government knew exactly where Austin was. And we had an opportunity to bring him home for 12 and a half years. And then after Damascus was breached, the prisons were opened, but the important prisoners were taken out before Damascus was breached. And so now we're a little bit behind place zero because now we have to figure out exactly where Austin is hidden at this moment.
So some of what you're saying is new, right? Like when you say we knew where he was exactly for 12 and a half years, but during the 12 and a half years, did you know that we knew, or have you learned new information? Something?
No. We were always told that we didn't know where Austin was. That's what we were always told. And then we had the opportunity to have access to all of the information about Austin. And
recently, this happened very recently.
Yeah, this was very recent. It was exceedingly painful. It was 2 very long days looking through a huge amount of information. And
I think we should say much of it was classified, right? So
right.
you can't share.
So I can't really go into any detail here, but I can tell you that finding so much truth after so much untruth was exceedingly painful. I think I'm still recovering from that. I don't know if I ever will recover from that, actually. So to know that right up to the breach of Damascus, we knew where Austin was. And, you know, I'm wondering why we didn't go snatch him the day before or 4 days before, a week and a half before, right? Instead of, I think our government was believing that when the prisons opened, Austin was going to walk out of one of them, which was ridiculous. That was a ridiculous expectation.
So what do you know then now about his whereabouts and his condition? If you can share it.
Yeah, well, I don't know as much now from what we learned there, but we do know that he has been hidden. I'm guessing that this reward that was offered, has caused a lot of chaos in the region. But it's been very motivating to a lot of people. So I think someone's hiding him for his value. And I feel certain that we'll be seeing him and he will walk free. But it's very challenging.
Well, I know it's painful for you, so I want to be sensitive to both the fact that it's a painful time for you and your family, unusually so. Well, and also that the administration shared a great deal of classified information with you, so you have a clearer picture, really, than you've had ever, right?
Right.
About everything that's happened. So, but I just want to say, you're confident still Austin is alive, recoverable, and that there are steps that can be taken to bring him home.
Yes. I've never had a flicker of doubt about that. I've never had.
And again, it's a sensitive thing. Do you have a sense of where the government intends to go at this point from here? What actions they might be contemplating? They have been transparent in a way that you haven't always had, but do you have a sense of whether there's a plan?
I don't have any idea what the plan is. I have some things that I would like for them to plan.
And what do you think should be done?
I really believe, okay, so for 12 and a half years, we were under this bond that said it has to be Syria and United States, nobody else. Well, it could never come together properly. But overnight, that's gone. That's gone. And so now we have the ability to reach out to all of our allies anywhere in the world, willing to help and leverage them to help us get Austin home. And there's a lot of political, all kinds of stuff all underneath all of this. And this is where our allies could really be an asset to Austin's freedom.
And so what have you said, I mean, in having the files opened, that seems possibly indicative of something, but what have you said back about expectations of action or steps to be taken at this point?
I don't understand the question.
Well, have you asked the government for more forceful action? Have you had a chance to voice your feelings about what should happen next?
Yes, but I'm not sure I'm getting in the right ears, but yes, I have, I'm not shy.
I mean, I think we should say over the 12 years of since Austin disappeared, you've had interactions with senior officials in Democratic and Republican administrations. You've heard pledges of support from President Biden. You've heard direct support at different times from President Trump, I think, that's right. You've interacted with officials in the current administration directly in weeks. For all that, it seems that you're always just a bit short of getting that final step, that extra action. Is that how it is?
Yes.
And you have do you have any sense that that's going to change with the new administration now at this point?
I hope so. I hope so. And one thing, well, there are many things that I admire about President Trump, but one thing is he will go to our allies and he will work with them, and so I really believe, I believe there is a lot of hope in reaching out, and there are plenty, even just right there in the Middle East, that are eager to help and to find and to engage with our government and work together. And there's a lot that can be done throughout the Middle East. And so working together just raises the water for everybody. And so I do have a lot of hope and confidence in this administration.
I feel chastened now that I have a handheld microphone, but hopefully you can hear me better. Can you share a little bit about, more broadly, in learning more about what's gone on in the last 12 and a half years, were there some other takeaways or things you learned about Austin's whereabouts and journey in that time that you're able in any way to share? Are there some takeaways or things that struck you particularly as you filled in some of those blanks?
Okay, I'm inclined to be the nasty whiner, but I'm not going to have to sit through that. But I will say, and especially in this building, in this room, to these people, day one, when Austin was detained, Clarissa Ward became like captain, right? And she, encouraged every journalist anywhere in the Middle East, but predominantly in Lebanon and Syria, find out what you can find out about Austin Tice. And there was a lot of information that was gathered by those journalists. And a lot of those journalists put themselves in profound danger to get the information that they had. That information did not go to us because my husband and I were just a hot mess laying on the floor. So that all went to the FBI. It went to the FBI and it went in a file. And then we had an agent in 2015. So all of this information was gathered in 2012, laying dormant for 3 years. And then we had an agent that started trying to track a lot of it down. It was so actionable. It was so actionable. And when Austin was first detained, the Syrian government didn't chase Austin and arrest him. They took possession of him accidentally, and that's a long story. But when they accidentally took possession of him, they didn't want him on their hands. And they tried very hard to get our government to take Austin, and our government was not willing in 2012. So, you know, when I tell you there was a lot of pain in these 16 hours, there was a lot of pain in these 16 hours. So I don't even remember the question, Matt, sorry.
Well, what have you learned about what Austin's been through for the last 12 years? And what kind of shape he's been in, what kind of care he's gotten? Do you have anything you can share that came out of any of this work that gave you any more indication of what it's been like for him?
I don't know what it's been like for Austin, but I do know that, you know, after the rough days, the early rough days for him, he has been cared for. He's had medical care. He hasn't been abused, you know, in quite a few years. I mean, I doubt if he's ever felt like yippee-yi-yi-chi-yo, right, on any given day. And I know that he wants to walk free. But he has an incredible strong will. He has always had a very strong will in the most positive way. And so I think that feeds in a lot to why, I mean, my faith in God and then my belief in Austin's strong will, that we will see him walk free.
I want to talk about a couple of other things, but just based on a part of what you just said about, if you can share it. If you can, I understand, because some of it was classified. But it sounds like you've got broader disenchantment across how the U.S. government has interacted and engaged in the effort to bring him home over this whole period. I guess I don't really read it as a partisan statement from you the way that you've said it, but kind of a governmental failure. But is that fair? Is that part of what you have felt as you've learned more about what's happened here?
I mean, I wouldn't call it failure. It was declined.
But why? Do you know what happened?
You know, the Middle East is a very complicated place. And Syria is one of the most complicated places. And so you know, I really don't want to go on the deep dive on this, but engagement with Syria is not palatable to our government. It doesn't work with our own goals, our government's goals.
Well, when you were here about 6 months ago, and you came to the press club, we were right in that period where the Assad government was falling. And I think we all shared or felt maybe there was some hope of movement on Austin's case. And you actually went to Syria and spent some time there and had some very high-level meetings and contacts. And how long were you there then?
I feel like I was there 45 minutes. I mean, it was a very short amount of time that I was there, 2 or 3 days.
I think we should say you lived there for a while in the past, a few years
Yeah,
ago
actually,
in Damascus.
you know, I get to put a little pin on me because I guess, you know, I really am the mother of Austin, because when I went to Damascus, and I lived in Damascus with the internally displaced for 3.5 months, history will show that that was the most dangerous time in Damascus. So, like mother, like son, or like son, like mother, however that works. But anyway, so yeah, and you can imagine, you know, I was very active in the last parish that was still having the Mass in English. I worked with the nuns, and because I don't have Arabic, I worked with the children. I love children. And so, you know, just to give the moms a break, I would just play games with them out in the courtyard and that kind of thing. So Syria is beautiful. I was there in winter, and then I was there when spring came, and the whole city smells like jasmine and orange. And anyway, so yeah, I have a really special place in my heart for Syria, for Damascus.
Tell us about the trip you took this past winter, right after the Assad government had fallen, and I think you met some very senior people, and you spent the time there. Tell us what that was like, and again, anything you learned or understood differently about the situation from that visit.
It was almost like a fairy tale. You know how in the fairy tale you have the really good part that helps you go to sleep really well, but you also have the scary witch and all of that in your fairy tale. And so it was very much like that kind of a thing, because being able to meet with the new president of Lebanon, who happens to be from the Own family, and I follow the Own family like I don't even know. I follow them so much because they are a fine, wonderful Lebanese family. And then to have, you know, one of their sons to be president, and for me to get to meet him was just really a gift. And then I also met the new prime minister, and I also met the prime minister that I've been meeting for years, and he was so free not to be the prime minister anymore, so he was like a whole different person. You know, and go back and talk to the intel guys that watched over me, unbeknownst to me, while I was living in Syria in 14 and 15. But then, you know, the utter surprise of being invited to meet with Ahmed al-Sharaa was, you know, he wasn't president yet.
But this is the new leader of Syria.
Right. Yeah, and you know, I did not ever go to the presidential palace when Bashar al-Assad was there. So went to the presidential palace. The room that we met him in was probably 100 yards deep, and he's 1 year younger than Austin. So there was just a lot of connection there. And, you know, speaking with him, I wish I had brought this to you, Matt. I have a picture book of Austin. It's just a little, you know, like just a little photo book. And I gave him one, and of all the people that I have given that book to, presidents, prime ministers, foreign ministers, he was the only person that ever took that book, and he wanted to know about every picture. How old was Austin here? This meeting was 2 hours long, and we left when we said to him, "You must have a lot to do. We should leave." Because, you know, I think if we hadn't done that, he would have invited us to spend the night, you know? So it was amazing. It was an amazing event. He was determined that he would, you know, find Austin, do everything he could to find Austin. Just one second.
Is he helping now? Are you in touch with him?
Yes, they just created, I can't remember what it's called, but it's a specific liaison in the search for Austin Tice. This is the Syrian government has just now set that up in the last few days. What was I going to tell you about the last thing?
About the what?
Visiting him.
Oh, that he would have stayed longer had
Yeah, he
you
would
not
have
said
stayed
you're
longer.
busy in the middle of governmental overthrow.
Oh,
all the
and
rest.
the other thing that touched me was he had been a prisoner himself. And what he wants is for families to be reunited. And when he's thinking about families being reunited, he's thinking, you know, best case, you have your loved one in your arms, of course. But he also thinks about information being reuniting families. And then, you know, the most painful is knowing where their eternal rest is, right? And for him, he doesn't care who makes that happen. He doesn't have any ego in it. He just wants it to happen because he knows himself what his mother suffered. And that same evening, somewhere in the middle of that evening, he told his guys to go get his mom. So they actually drove out, picked her up, and brought her in. So she comes in across this room, right? And I'm walking toward her, and we grabbed each other, just grabbed each other. And our whole conversation, we stayed in a hug. And there was this little face right here that's, you know, translating for both of us. So anyway, it was just really, it was something I will always cherish. It was just something, it was a gift from God that just happened for both of these families, I think.
Also was a photographer who became a reporter, and you're a photographer. And I think you have some pictures from this trip last winter. Do you want to talk about them a little bit and tell us what we're seeing?
These are Austin's pictures now.
Okay.
Can you see it, Deborah?
Can you see it?
I can see it.
We've got Austin's pictures and we've also got some of Deborah's pictures, right?
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that was in D.C. Those pictures are in D.C.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, those are in D.C. It's some kind of festival here that he took when he was practicing his photography.
Can we get to the Syria ones, Bill, or should we?
It's on a loop right
Okay,
now.
it's on a
I'll
loop.
let you know when those are up. There's
Okay.
a question.
A long question.
Good. Administration.
Just to build on my questions, can you say any more about why the previous administrations didn't act on rescuing Austin if they knew where he was? And just to clarify, are you saying the U.S. government knew which specific prison he was held in?
I don't think it's appropriate in this environment to talk about their motivations. It's not very hard to figure out, but the other part is
Do you know which prison he was held in during that time?
the prisons were known. Yeah. No.
Sorry. You said the prisons were known, right? Do you want to go back and forth?
Here's a picture of Debra with Shira right here.
Here you are.
The president of Lebanon, Anoun, Debra and Shira.
This is from last winter.
Yeah.
Some of the questions here are going to anticipate some of the ones I wanted to ask you anyway, which I guess means we're all thinking in the same path, which is good. But so clearly, and we know, we've seen you here over the years, that this is an emotional roller coaster for you and for your family. And you have a large family. I've had the pleasure of spending time with your family, which is large and busy and supportive and doing lots of things. How do you and your husband and your kids and their loved ones keep your bearings through all of this? How do you help each other? Can you talk about how you get through this?
Well, this is just another blessing that we had when Austin was first detained. And, you know, all of his siblings were saying, okay, what do we need to do? What do we need to do? And in those very first moments of even a more profound ignorance than we have now, we said, look, we're the mom and dad. We get your brother home. You do your life. And, you know, we'll have a celebration together. But we don't want you guys to get bogged down. And besides, this isn't going to take very long. I am so incredibly grateful that that was what we chose, because in 12 years, we've had college graduations, weddings, 5 more grandchildren. My daughter owns her own business. One of my sons is partner in a restaurant. You know, their lives have been rich and amazing, and I'm just so incredibly proud. And also, they accepted themselves as orphans, and they made a circle, and they parent each other. And, you know, even with the discipline necessary and everything. So, you know, every now and then, Mark and I perhaps get invited into being, you know, the adjunct parents. But they have really taken care of each other in an amazing way, and it was just one of those moments for a mom when our little tiny family that's actually 18 minus 1, so there were 17 of us here in DC with matching T-shirts, and I told everybody I wanted them to wear them every day, and you can't put anything over them. So if it's going to be cold, put your layers under. They all did it. Our little grandchildren, you know, bring my uncle home. So it was really, it was a bittersweet time for us to have those days together. And then, you know, my children got to be amazing again when they were all ready to leave. They were all going to leave on that Sunday. And
This is in December, I think, again.
yeah,
Right?
December. And Saturday night, Damascus was breached. And, you know, the DNA Tices reached out to their significant others and said, I have to stay, take the kids, you know, I have to stay. And they just changed their flights, changed their work, you know, whatever they needed to do. Those 6 children stayed with us for an entire another week, more than a week, working in this new environment. I am incredibly blessed with my children. Did that answer your question?
Very well. I want to ask you 2 more things. Bill, I have time for 2 more questions, or let me see, maybe this is one of the questions right here. Well, let me ask this specific one, and I want to ask you a couple more, and we may have more. But and I don't know whether you can share if what you've learned recently with the briefing changed any of this. What was Austin's last known public location that's confirmed, and when was that? This question.
You mean like before he was detained?
Or I think if I'm reading this right, the last time he's been verified to have been seen publicly, I don't know whether that was before he was detained or after. Do you know when?
He hasn't been seen publicly since he was detained.
Ever since he was detained. So it's
Yeah.
how close to the day he disappeared was he last seen? Where was he?
I mean, we have a picture of him at his own birthday party on August 11th of 2012. And I think those photos are the last ones. And then he was detained on August 14th.
He was seen in Syria shortly before the 14th by
Yeah.
some people?
Yeah.
Okay, two things. So you've been on this horrible journey that you never expected to be on for 12 and a half years now. It's kept changing, as we've discussed. You've recently learned many new things that you didn't know. Can you reflect a bit or share thoughts on what you've learned about the government and the press during this period of time, as institutions, as bodies that you've dealt with and spent a lot of time with?
Governments are a labyrinth. Very hard to find your way through them. You know, this idea that I'm the taxpayer, you work for me, we can put that in the file in the back now. So that's been a huge disappointment. Journalists have been the backbone. Journalists have been the ones that have been determined to find their own people, their own person. I do believe that in his first administration, Donald Trump made a huge effort for Austin. John Bolton and Mike Pompeo ran interference on him tremendously. There was so much deception there. And I do think that President Trump now is determined not to allow that to happen again. I think he's still determined to get Austin home. The challenge is just so much bigger than it was then. And that's why I'm pushing and hoping that our government, our current administration, will be reaching out to our allies just very intensely and sincerely.
What can the people in this room, on the people who know about Austin's case and are with you, you know, beyond the government, what can we be doing? What should we be doing? What would make a difference in finally taking that last step, as you say, to get Austin home?
Well, I think, you know, the most important thing is, you know, just keeping it up. And I can give you a lot of my personal jealousies about hostages that, you know, were constantly in the news and constantly. And I understand because you could see them and they would be talking to you and they would be in court and you could have their picture and you could see what they look like from what they look like, you know, 5 months ago or whatever. And I know the challenge is there. But even though you can't see Austin, I tell you, talk about him anyway, show his picture. I'm sure he's aging as horribly as his mother, but we only have the handsome pictures, you know. So, you know, I just think that's the most important thing, is just to say we're not giving up. He's coming home. It's challenging. You know, asking the government, who are you working with now? Who's working to find Austin today? You know, I mean, I think it's just those very simple things. But also, I know that the news that Austin left 12 and a half years ago, the way the news was reported, was a whole different world than what we live in now. You know, maybe at that time you had a minute, or maybe you even had 24 hours sometimes. Now you've got maybe 3.5 seconds, maybe. news, 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 news. And we're not looking at the paper either. We're looking at our phone. We're looking at our phone. I know that's not interesting. I don't know. I already checked my thought. But ding, ding, ding. It's really hard. It's really hard to get someone to look at one picture for, let's say, 15 seconds. That'd be a long time, wouldn't it? So you are challenged. You are challenged on that for sure. Does that answer the question?
Very well. Bill, do we have time for a couple more, or are we?
Oh.
Okay. So
Thank you.
here's a question. Oh,
Oh, yes.
yeah. Well, the question, I'll come, and I've got a couple more for you, but during this time as well, the people of Syria, of course, have been through a tremendous amount, have endured a great deal in the last 12 years themselves, and including recently and going right up until today. You spent a lot of time there. How much is Austin, from what you can tell, in the consciousness of the Syrian people? Does he get covered on the news? Are Syrians aware of his case and his situation?
The Syrians are always about Austin. And when he was first detained, he had stayed in Yabrud. Excuse me, just 1 minute. He stayed in Yabrud for a little over a week. The people of Yabrud fell in love with him. And when he was detained, and at that time, they were having every Friday after prayers, they would have these events in the street with posters and so forth. They always had big posters of Austin. We have lots of those pictures of those parades, and they would be asking for Austin's release. When I go to Syria, I know this isn't true, but I feel like everybody knows me, and they come up and they ask about Austin, and they tell me about how they know about him or if he's been in their home. So it's a whole different feeling. And also the other thing from the beginning, the people in Lebanon and the people in Syria are far too familiar about disappeared loved ones. And so the difference between me walking in the grocery store now and someone will come up to me and go, "Oh, Debbie, how are you?" And in Lebanon, it's like, "I understand. Do you want to go have tea?" And it's just so much more of a trauma. It's just more of something that you're working toward, ending kind of thing. And so, yeah, I get a lot of support in Syria.
Okay, this will be my last question.
Okay, and I have one more thing that Bill reminded me I need to say.
Maybe this will cover both, but you've talked about what we can do and what the press has done or needs to do. You've talked about some of your meeting with officials across the last 12 years. If you can say, based on what you've learned, if you had the chance today to sit down one-on-one with the president, maybe the way Zelensky did at the Vatican, and it was the two of you, what would you say to him that is needed to make this difference to get Austin home? What would you ask?
So I would have several asks. I sent a letter to Putin, President Putin, asking him because Bashar al-Assad and his brother Maher al-Assad had both gone to Russia. So I sent a letter asking him to talk with Bashar and Maher and see what information they could get about Austin. To my shock and surprise, the next day was the press conference of Putin, which he does once a year for the Russian people. It's hours and hours and hours long. but he mentioned Austin in a way that made you feel like you knew him. And he mentioned him twice in that press conference. So I believe that he was messaging that he had something to share. So I would really appreciate, and maybe it's happened and I just don't know, but I would very much appreciate for President Trump to ask about those two references to Austin. The other thing that I would really like to see happen is trying to figure out where Austin is by asking the journalists that have been covering the area, what have you found out? What can you share with me? Settle it up as to whether Austin was taken to Iran. Find out from the Iranians, was Austin ever in Iran? Let's settle that, so that we can begin to think about where he is and what we need to do to bring him home.
Well, Deborah, I think everybody in this room is with you, and I think many more are not in this room who I hope you hear from or hope are want to be engaged and helpful and are wanting to pray for and help in any way we can to bring Austin home. I appreciated Bill's remarks, but the entire Washington Post company, bigger than any individuals, is also behind you. He was there at the time doing some work for us, among others. I think we all admire your courage and your fortitude, and we all long for the day that we can welcome Austin into this club and bring him home. So really, whatever you need from everybody here, and any help any of us can give, I think we're all wanting to be part of this cause and make sure that this long, sad experience comes to an end in the right way. So thank you very much for being here today and sharing what's been going on with us.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Matt. You're a good guy. Yeah. Thank you all for coming so much. Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate every single one of you being here. Thank you.
Thank you all for doing that. Thanks to everybody for coming. We're going to have another event happening here relatively soon. I'm not sure what the time start for the next one is, Julie. At 1:30 here, we'll have another panel about domestic challenges in press freedom. I want to just leave with one thought, is that when the Tice family came here in December, all of them stood up at a podium here in the press club, and they said they had sources in the government that were telling them where Austin had been and what kind of shape he was in. And at that time, the government denied that. They said, we don't have any new information. We don't know what they're talking about. And now we're here. All of us are here 5 months later. And the government has shown the Tice family everything. And they have confirmed what they were saying in December. So in December, the government response was, we don't know what she's talking about. And now, within weeks recently, they have confirmed all of that. Right? I'm not going to tell you what to think of that, but I think this is what she's been pushing against. And so she needs everybody's help to try to get through that kind of problem.
I will add to that, Bill. If there's no information about Austin, and so much of the information is secret, so you're not getting it, I'm not getting it, right? So there's no information about Austin Tice. Well, then the easiest thing to do is just assume that he's dead, right? Because then you don't have to stay up all night about it anymore. No, thank you. No, thank you. If you don't know, let's go with he's still alive and he wants to walk free. So that is another thing that, there is a whole club in the United States government that's like, dead. May as well be dead. I mean, if we're going to pick one or the other, that makes it a lot easier for us. Yikes, guys. Not this, mama. No, no, no. So, yeah, that is very much an issue. That is exceedingly an issue. And there was a sort of a club of 2013. Austin was dead, 2013. Well, I went into a cell where Austin had written 2015 on the wall. So I said, you know, the 13 club needs to sort of up their date, you know, because they're kind of not really getting it right. Sorry, guys, but I'm very dark humor. So thank you, Bill. Thank you.